Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS in.form. Today we're going to talk about C.A.S.A, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, and they need volunteers. You may want to be a C.A.S.A member or a C.A.S.A themselves. Joining us in the studio is Elaine Schitter. Also joining us is Kristie Foote. Now, Kristie and Elaine are supervisors with C.A.S.A, but at one point you guys were C.A.S.As. So let's start off with, what is a court-appointed special advocate? Much easier just to say C.A.S.A.
A C.A.S.A. So we advocate for the children that have been removed or are in the court system because of abuse or neglect. And they are the eyes and ears for the judge. We check on children in their new placement. We follow how the progress of their parents are doing, because the first goal is reunification with their families. We make reports for the judge, and we attend hearings and testify at certain hearings, all in the best interest of the child, and we make recommendations.
And you are in need of volunteers.
That is correct.
And so volunteers would become these advocates, right? What does a volunteer do? What do? They do the work that she was saying?
Yes, a C.A.S.A is assigned to each case, and what they would do is they would get to know the key players in the case. They would talk with teachers, with daycares, the medical professionals, to make sure that that child is receiving all the services that are needed. As a C.A.S.A volunteer, you are going to be making recommendations to the judge of what you would like to see happen to give the child the best result.
Does the judge select who the C.A.S.A is going to be, or does that come from C.A.S.A?
It comes from the C.A.S.A office. Dina Hubler, our director, she will take into several factors when she's selecting a C.A.S.A for the case. Some might be where they live, location, so to make it easier. Some C.A.S.As do better with babies. There could be all kinds of things like that are factored into it. Then before she assigns the case, she talks to the C.A.S.A to see if it will work for them and timing and so forth. And then the judge has to appoint them and make an order appointing them that they have to have with them.
Okay. Now, this is somebody volunteering to do this. Mm-hmm. How much time are they giving of themselves to be a C.A.S.A?
We say on average you spend about 5 to 7 hours a month on a case. So when you think of the big picture, it's really not as much of a time commitment as you think. Each case varies, and you do a lot of gathering information as well as visiting the child once every 30 days.
Okay. And I guess you don't just get to go do this, there's going to be some sort of training.
Correct. Every C.A.S.A goes through 30 hours of in-service training, not just on the legalities and the ins and outs of being a C.A.S.A, but computer training. We have a system that we track everything in. So a
C.A.S.A member then is trained, and then they observe these children in the atmosphere they're in and make a report?
Yes. They gather information, as Kristie said. They gather information as they're going along before they're due to go to a hearing. And once it's time for a hearing, the judge needs a report from them that fills in the gray areas, if you will, and they make recommendations on what they think is in the child's best interest.
Okay. Now, the children come from the CHINS program? Or how does CHINS play into this? Which is child in need of services.
Absolutely. Once a child is adjudicated a CHINS, which means they have decided that the child needs services, that they need intervention from the courts. I lost my train of thought.
Once they are a CHINS, that means that DCS has either removed them or they are now involved with them. So once they are a CHINS, a child in need of services, then C.A.S.A is appointed, and then the whole process starts.
Now, this sounds to me like, as a volunteer, as a C.A.S.A member, that would be really hard work to do. It would be, I don't want to use the word stressful, because I know people do it for that reason, but that's got to be difficult.
It is. It's challenging. I can't tell you how much we appreciate our C.A.S.As and how much the judge appreciates. They play a very, very important role in this whole process because, you know, children, even when they're removed, even for some horrific reason, you know, it's still their parents. It's still their family. And same for the parents, you know, it's traumatizing. So the more information we can have and the gray areas that can be filled in, the better decision the judge can make when it comes time for that.
Kristie, you alluded to it's like 3 to 5 hours a week or 5 to 8 hours a week?
5 to 7 hours
Okay.
a month.
A month?
A month.
Yeah, man, there's a
Yeah.
huge difference there.
Absolutely.
That's like less than an hour a week that really you're spending. Is that, let's say it's 5 hours, is that time spent all at one time, or is it like 2 hours here and 3 hours here?
It is spread out. The amount of time you spend with the child can vary, and then also that's including gathering any kind of information, any documents you read, writing that court report that you're submitting to the judge. So that's not just visiting with the child, it's everything that you do as a CASA.
So you would be doing a home visit to kind of observe the child in that situation, and you'd also maybe be going to court. Does a CASA have the right or the ability to say, I've observed them and really judged they should not go back to that family, or I've observed them and it's a great situation, they need to go back? Is that?
Yes, that's exactly right. That they can say it, but it's not just an opinion. They back it up with facts. Like perhaps there's a drug problem, and they talk about how many screens and failed screens and so forth. If there's a violent problem and something has occurred, they can bring that up, and they can say, I recommend child remain in foster care at this time, or wherever point we are in the case.
And I would imagine you get confused occasionally with Mentors for Youth or other such programs, but you are a different kind of program. In what way?
Well, we advocate for the child, and what our job is simply observe, whereas Mentors for Youth, I feel like they might be a little more hands-on with the child, taking them to different activities. But as a CASA, your role is to ensure that they're in a safe environment and making sure that their needs are being met.
And once the case is over, then our relationship pretty much goes away, because we move on to another case, whereas in Mentors for Youth or Big Brothers, Big Sisters, which are awesome programs for the children, they have longer relationships with them.
Now, you are in need of volunteers. So how do you get somebody to volunteer? If they're thinking of doing it, what should they do? Should they call? Do they need to pay a visit? How does that work?
Well, you can reach out to us. We are on Facebook. We also are on the Dubois County website. It has additional information, as well as our director, Dina Hubler's information. Any of the two supervisors, we're both supervisors, and our director are happy to answer any questions. Also, if you know a current volunteer, reach out, ask questions, and see if it's a right fit for you.
And something for folks to know is you may not feel comfortable doing this, but you're going to be trained.
Right.
So you're going to know. 30 hours of training is a pretty good amount of training. And do you have trainings like once a year? How do you do trainings?
Most often it's at least 3 times a year,
Oh, okay.
and then depending on the need. Right now we have 135 children in Dubois County children in our program.
And we actually have 14 children going unserved right now that are on our waiting list.
Wow. It's a shame that number is as high as it is. But then if you say you've only got 14, that means that you've got a lot of people already doing this. Would you say the volunteers are people with big hearts?
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
We currently have 65 volunteers, so we do have a large volunteer base, but with the need of CASAs constantly growing, we have to recruit new volunteers just to keep up with the demand.
And one of the questions that people ask oftentimes is, you know, I work. I don't know if that I would have time for this. Many of our CASAs are full-time employees, you know, so it just depends on their work situation if they can do it, but many are full-time employees.
And aside from court hearings, you control your schedule. You can set up what works for you, so working full-time doesn't disqualify you from being a volunteer with the program.
Well, and as you mentioned, 5 to 7 hours a month, not a
month.
week. Like I said, that's really, you really can easily control it. That's a
Right.
lunchtime. That's a lunch break.
Right, and I would also say that sometimes it's a little more than that, and sometimes it's less than that, depending on the circumstances and also how many children in the family are removed. Sometimes it's only one, and sometimes we've had way more than that.
So you need volunteers. And if you're thinking of being a volunteer, get information, because you can always get the information, go, well, that's not quite for me. Or you can get the information, this is exactly what I'm looking for.
Right.
And it's probably a way to really for people to get back to the community. And most importantly, to help kids who are in need.
These children are very much in need, and we are the voice for them. They, you know, the kids are not in court. They're little. They can't speak for themselves, so we are the voice for them to say what is in their best interest. How, you know, safety is a big thing, and their emotional well-being, etc. So it's an extremely important role.
And we always say DCS is represented by their attorney, mom and dad are represented by their attorney, so CA.S.A is there to represent the child. Our end goal is obviously reunification, but unfortunately that's not always a situation that can be made reality.
One more question. Each of you gets to answer this. You're talking to a volunteer and they say, why should I be a CA.S.A, court-appointed special advocate? Why should I be an advocate?
I would say because every child deserves to have a champion, that one stable person in their life, and unfortunately not everybody is that fortunate.
And I would say from a personal standpoint that anytime I've ever been overwhelmed with the content, because some things are very sad that we see, I think about the child and I think, what if they had no one to represent them? And it is such a worthwhile thing to give to, a program to give to.
Okay, and we were talking a little bit off air. There's good and there's bad.
Right.
And really the good and the bad are kind of the same way. One is you see the bad, you see the situation, but the good, you see it resolved.
And that's what people, I have had people say, oh, I could never do that. They don't feel like it's in their capability to do that. And I tell them, for all the sadness and so forth, there is joy. There is joy in this program too. Joy in helping the children. Joy in the success if the family can get it together and stay a family. And joy in if they're going to be left in the foster system, that they are adopted and find good, safe homes that they have security in.
Well, hats off to anybody who is a CA.S.A and for the work that you do.
You bet.
And also, I guess I'm not done with my questions. I guess also as a CA.S.A, you're not there alone. That's why you're supervisors. Mm-hmm. You're helping your CA.S.As. Mm-hmm. So do they come to you and say, I have this situation, how do I handle it?
Absolutely. And it's actually a recent thing that C.A.S.A has paid employees. Our program has grown so much that what has happened is we were hired as supervisors to be a better support for our volunteers. So we're very familiar with the cases, so if you need help with recommendations or they're frustrated with the case, we're there to assist them in any way they need.
Because you've been down that road.
Absolutely.
So, and you could be a volunteer. They are needing volunteers now, and they will be needing volunteers in the future. Unfortunately, that is a need. But they also can use funds. If you would like to make a contribution to C.A.S.A, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, please do so. Check out your Facebook page, you said?
Yep.
And you can find out more information that way. Better yet, just call the office and talk to somebody in person is always a good way to go.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Kristie Foote, thank you very much. Elaine Schitter, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, not just for being on the show, but for the work that you do. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching WJTS in.form. We are local people watching local people.